Hey guys, welcome back to Brick System Brothers. I'm Nathan Masters, and this video is our 12th edition of HUWTAP. HUWTAP stands for Hold Up, What's That Awesome Piece? And today we are talking about the humble Lego chair. Now the Lego chair has made it into our list here at number 12, just as kind of an overall useful piece. It's really good at doing one job, like some of the other pieces we've looked at. This one job is, of course, being a Lego chair. Even though you can build pretty decent Lego chairs out of other Lego elements, this distinctive shape with the kind of curved back and just the geometry of the piece could be difficult to get into a tight space, or if you just need to build a lot of things that look like a chair with few elements. So I'm thinking something like maybe in a train car or an airplane, you just want rows of seats. It's pretty easy to get a hold of these guys in red and yellow and just knock that out with 20 chairs, rather than try to build a bunch of chairs with smaller elements, easily working your way into hundreds of pieces just to get that job accomplished. So, really simple piece when you look at it. Dimensions are 2 by 2 at the base and then 2 studs high. It's been around since 1980, so let's go ahead and jump on our Bricklink and check that out. So here's the entry on our new Bricklink XP, still in the beta testing of course, but I think it's doing pretty well. And as we've seen, we're able to look at quite a bit of details for the Lego chair. This particular entry is the old style mold, and we'll go back and look at the pieces in a minute, but there was a very slight update to the mold in 2014. Even the old mold lasted a long time before it got updated, 1980 to 2014. So did pretty well. 14 known colors for the initial mold, including a few harder colors to find. So this green chair here, surprisingly few sets. Seems like there were only 7 or so, including the Valley of the King set I recently looked at. I haven't looked really close at some of these other colors. Maybe this pink one. Yeah, only 5 sets for the Paradisa pink. Dark pink would be another interesting color to get a hold of. 6 sets there. So if you have a chair that's in less than 10 sets, that might be considered more of a rare element, even if that's not really your definition of rare. But this particular mold, again, kind of getting cut off in 2014. You can use Bricklink XP to see when a certain color was used. Looks like this dark orange was only produced in 2003. Let's look at our slightly alternate mold here. As you can see, there's a different sprue point for 4079. And that's really the only update. The geometry is pretty much the same, but there are some additional colors here that were not available in the old. So our tan chair is now available in 7 sets as of 2020. Dark blue is still pretty rare in just 1 set. That would be the upside down, so Stranger Things D2C set from last year, I believe. So yeah, dark blue, if you need that chair color, pretty hard to find at the moment, but pretty much every other color represented here in both of our mold types. One other thing I wanted to mention about this chair is it actually had a pretty explosive introduction. The minifigure chair was introduced in 1980, and when we go to our old Bricklink style webpage, we can actually see those by year a little easier than we can get to them in the new one. So this first year that's available looks like it was in 20 sets, and not only was it in this wide variety of sets, but it was also available in a wide variety of colors in our light gray, black, red, yellow, and blue, all introduced in 1980 in city sets, and the train here, platform, another train, mostly city it looked like. I think this did get into the classic space later in the 80s, but yeah, just an interesting note about the first time we saw the chair actually had a pretty widespread introduction. So I think the LEGO group had kind of anticipated the need for this element for a couple years, and when it was finally produced and introduced to official LEGO sets, it was widely used right away. Yeah, so as I mentioned about that mold mark on here, it's actually pretty noticeable when you have 2 side by side in the light. Again, this green chair actually coming from my 5919 Valley of the Kings without a mold mark on the bottom. This one from the Hans Landspeeder in Solo, and clearly showing that circular mold mark right underneath. Yeah, you know, cosmetically it's a little bit different, but most of the time you'll probably have a minifigure seated on these, so it doesn't really make a big difference. Let's look at the geometry of the piece. First thing you're going to notice is kind of this extended off the back section here. So our actual 2x2 footprint only exists for the bottom plate thickness of the chair, and then right away it does kind of have this extension that hangs over. So what you can't do with this chair is bring it right back up against a flat wall. And this is something you probably find out right away, especially as a younger builder when you're messing around with these chairs. Trying to put them up against a wall doesn't really work. So you learn pretty early that you'll have to hold it at least a stud. If you get those half stud offsets going, that works as well, but then you start raising your build base by half a plate and different thicknesses. The other thing we can see right away is our height match here at exactly 2 bricks. So if we start bringing other plates across on top of our chair, nothing really holding that up there, pretty smooth transition. So an exact height match is always nice in the LEGO system. You don't have to worry about things leaving a little gap or holding up a piece either. Now what we can do with this sloped back, since we have flat all across the back of the base, we have other elements with similar anti-geometry here. So some of our slopes are kind of the opposite piece of the puzzle, and we can actually add these behind chairs really easily. Perfectly legal, nothing is really rubbing or stressing the elements here, so that is something you can do. If you just need to have a continuous connection along the bottom and then something kind of set back at the top. And one other thing that does work is if we bring in some of our panels with the thin walls, we can also put those in behind the chairs and then get back to our offset way up at the top here when we're actually far above the chair. Now a word of warning on this particular construction: when you start adding minifigures into the build, this chair allows them to recline a little bit, and so if you do have something that comes back like this and you want your minifigures to sit all the way back in the chair, that's going to start causing problems because now they're rubbing on that piece back there. But yeah, for the most part this works. Maybe if you're just going after this geometry and you're not using it as a chair, you need to get this back into the system on the surface here. Something to keep in mind for building with that. Alright, so the rest of this element, well, before I go to minifigures, let's look at stacking multiples of the element. These all line up really nicely, so that could be used for something, especially if you have them all in the same color. You start getting a surface here that's, you know, curved surfaces in LEGO come in a variety of forms and can be used in a variety of applications. So just keeping that in mind, our chair is an available curved surface. So other than that, there's stacking chairs, and that doesn't work out very well just because of this radius in the corner, so I'm not going to talk about that. Instead, everything else that we do with the chair in system is usually related to minifigs. So the minifigs are kind of designed, or vice versa rather, the chair is designed to work with the minifigure, especially this radius right here as that comes down from the back to the bottom and to that flat area. So what the chair does actually allows these minifigs to recline just a little bit of an angle, so they're not sitting up perfectly vertical. They can actually lean back a little bit, kind of more of a natural feel with the chair. And that works all pretty well until you start adding in minifigures with hair, especially the ladies who have that longer hair. So Kira is going to help us out here. Shorter hair is fine. Pretty much anything that's up above the shoulders of LEGO minifigures is perfectly fine on chairs, but when you start looking at longer hair pieces, you start to have some problems. So here's kind of like the wizard style hair piece. This one's not going to work because this back of the chair is just holding that out too far. Another one with the braid on there, again interfering with the back of the chair. Friend's hair piece is actually could go either way. It's somewhat rubberized, so it can flex a little bit, but it is still hitting right on the back of the chair here. So I wouldn't recommend using a friend's hair piece, especially if it's going to be sitting there a while. Even the Pirates of the Caribbean hair piece has no chance of working on a minifig. Now if you lean these minifigs forward, you can get the hairpiece on there, but I don't know, that's not really something I would want to have displayed in a project where they're just looking really uncomfortable, even though the hair's on all the way. Before I look at other... So that's most of the hair that we have that doesn't work with chairs. There are a couple notable exceptions here. Our recent biker helmet hair is kind of windswept back far enough to where that doesn't interfere with the back of the chair at all. There's actually quite a bit of playroom there. And then two other ones worthy of note are this kind of ponytail hairpiece that actually has just enough play behind the minifigure torso to work really well with the Lego chair. Almost like it was designed to kind of hang down behind the chair, and it only works in this position when the minifig is reclined all the way back. So, you know, even at first glance, definitely looks like it's too long to be compatible with a seated minifig, but this gap behind the torso actually allows this to work out just fine, and there's no stress at all on this connection. One additional piece that I think could go either way is this one with the braid going down the back. Again, we see that gap behind the torso, but this time it's not quite as large as the previous ponytail hair. There's actually a little bit of interference with the back of the chair. Nothing really serious because it's not like pushing this piece out at all like we were seeing with something like this. There is still that slight gap, but this one does rub a little bit on the chair. So if you do need to have a hairpiece that doesn't interfere, this one is the way to go. It's available in a couple colors, but not super common either. Alright, so let's look at maybe some other pieces that don't work with the chair. If you start looking at things that we can put on the neck of minifigures like our oxygen tanks, then we start to have these issues where there's this piece hanging down on the back, and this is the area of the minifig that needs to rest against the chair. So yeah, you can see this definitely isn't going to work. It's just too low for the minifigure to be seated all the way. So yeah, pieces like our air tank, our backpacks, those interfere. There's one neck brace in particular that I found just barely works. It's this one with kind of like a camera on the front and then these two studs on the back. And this one just sits up right on the top surface of our 2x2 chair. It might rub just a little bit, but again, kind of in the same ballpark with this hairpiece where it isn't putting a ton of stress on the bracket, the neck bracket. So not something you really need to worry about if you have a minifig with this piece on. That can be seated. Kind of one of those random things. Just nice to know sometimes. Of course, if our minifigure has on really bulky headgear like our diving suit, that's not going to work at all. There's just too much going on behind the minifigure for that to work in the chair. One other thing would be Indiana Jones with his satchel bag here, where that comes in behind. Now this actually hangs below the seated legs, but that's not a problem because our chair is built up. The problem arises when we have the strap of the saddlebag interfering with the back of the minifig. So again, we can get them in position if we have them lean forward, not really desirable for display. So we kind of have to say no handbags, no satchels when seating minifigs. Yeah, so that's it for the Lego Chair 4079. Kind of some interesting history with the large introduction of the piece in 1980. Slight update in 2014, and it's still going strong here in 2020. Some recent colors being that dark blue, so keep an eye out for that one. Hopefully we will see that in some more sets soon, but yeah, definitely a very specialized piece in terms of being a chair. But I have seen this used in official sets as a fender and a forklift, so definitely has other applications as well, especially when you start to use this curvature on here as the back. You can start getting interesting designs going with that. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next Brick System Brothers video.